So this was a really interesting time in the history of the MDS. Many of us were wrestling with this concept of what Parkinson's disease really is. And we decided that it was time to take a hard look at the definition of Parkinson's disease. There were a number of inconsistencies in the classic definition, which had always been based on clinical syndrome, ultimately with pathology. First of all, there were genetic cases without synuclein. There was a high prevalence of incidental Lewy bodies in patients that never developed Parkinson's. And most importantly, there was this non-motor prodrome that we began to identify. Smell loss, REM sleep behavior disorder, constipation, etc. That combined with the fact that those of us that have been working with Parkinson's disease in clinical trials for 30 or 40 years realized that we just couldn't make any headway with disease modification. Trials of compounds that looked so good in the lab didn't have any effect clinically. So we figured that was probably because much of the damage by the time we were making the diagnosis was already done. We began to establish these task forces to deal with what we considered to be relevant issues in research and care of patients with movement disorders. So we set up a task force to look at the redefinition of Parkinson's disease. And the report that was published in 2014 really brought to bear the issues that ultimately became our prototype for where we are today. There were several proposals in this, and I think the most important one was that we were at a point in Parkinson's disease experimental therapeutics research and evolution that we probably ought to have a core clinical pathologic criteria of a clinical syndrome accompanied by synuclein neurodegeneration. And that really opened the door to really considering being able to diagnose Parkinson's disease in its premorbid state, which is really identifying the ability to make a diagnosis of the pathology of Parkinson's disease before patients actually develop it. And that remained a gold standard at that time until reliable biomarkers of synuclein deposition are developed, which is really what's happening now. So I think that's why I thought this was such a relevant article, because it does lay the foundation for what's ultimately happened in our field. It's not just the task force on the redefinition of Parkinson's disease. The movement disorder societies had many task forces that have done really heroic work in our field. The leadership of this society has consistently been involved in these amazing opportunities to change the course of our thinking, not just in Parkinson's disease, but in all movement disorders.